Alright guys, so here we are, we're in the art room today rather than the workshop. The reason why we're in the art room is the art desk that I have has a much smoother surface than the workbench, and since we're going to be cutting fabric and things like that, we want to make sure our surface is nice and smooth to work on. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to take some of this veg tan leather, so this is pre-dyed veg tan leather, and we're going to create a kind of band that goes around from the edge of this ocular to the other edge of the ocular, and that will wrap to the inside. And this is what we're going to use to sew the liner to, as well as mount the cheek guards, the leather cheek guards that are going to use the same material as this to go down along the sides. We are going to wrap this edge as well, since this is a not unfinished edge, but it is an exposed metal edge, and this could catch your ears or possibly hit the back of your neck or things like that whenever you're putting it on. So just to make it a little bit more comfortable to wear, we're going to use this softer leather. It's more of like an upholstery leather, a little bit thicker than that, but it's a soft leather anyway. And we're going to wrap it around the headband like this. We're obviously going to trim it, but we're just going to do that so that we have a more comfortable edge to this helmet as well, and it'll help make it finished looking. So as far as the liner itself, I'm just going to be using a cotton fabric. This is flannel. You could use any other cotton fabric that you want as well. You could use linen. That would be much more period accurate as well. But for the sake of this build, cotton is cheap. And it's going to be fairly easy to work with. For the actual internals, we're going to use the cotton balls for the stuffing. I'm just going to tear these apart so we have like a pillow-like material for the inside so that we have some good padding. And the reason I'm using cotton instead of something like polyester is because cotton, actually all organic fabrics typically don't stink as bad as the synthetic fabrics like polyester does. If you have any workout clothing that you wear, you will likely know what I'm talking about, that those fabrics tend to stink when exposed to sweat. So this is just a way to help minimize that. So all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting out the fabric and cutting out the leather, and then we'll get them riveted and mounted to the helmet, and we'll just go from there. So let's get started. All right, so now that I've got this strip kind of all figured out here, we got it cut and we trimmed the edges so that it's all squared. I'm just going to use this wooden burnishing tool just to clean up the edges of it a little bit. So all you're going to do with that is just kind of rub it along like this, and you can do it relatively quick. I'm going to go much quicker, and that's just going to round off the edges a little bit, kind of smooth them out a little more. All right guys, so we're back out in the garage right now. I did find out that the cutting mat that I was using actually works just fine on the workbench, so I'm probably going to just do the rest of the cutting out here rather than in the art room. But as you can see, I've started by mounting the leather onto the helmet. I've gone and punched a bunch of the holes. I punched all of the holes around the entire bottom band of the helmet. I've punched all of the holes into the soft leather and the holes into the stiff leather in that as well. So now I'm just going to go ahead and continue with the rivets all the way around. And the pattern for the rivets that I'm using is a nail head, well, a nail for the rivet, then a brass washer, just so that we've got something to accent with the brass on the rest of the helmet. Then that goes through the soft leather, then through the steel of the band, then through the other side of the soft leather since we've wrapped that around, and then that'll go through the stiff leather, and then we'll put another steel washer on the other side. So you can see that. We've got a steel washer here, and then we just hammer it over and round it like we were rounding any of the other rivets. So I'm not going to bore you doing this process over and over and over again because I've got 22 of these to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of that done. That will give us a mounting point, or rather a stitching point, to stitch the actual liner to. So when I'm done, I'll come back. I'll show you guys the finished band, and then we'll get started on the liner, how we're going to go ahead and get it so it's actually fitting your head. So see you guys in a bit. So quick change of plans. Whenever I was using the nails, all that's happening with the nails, because they're fairly long, is they're bending over on me like this pretty badly. Almost every single one of them. I think I just got lucky with that first rivet. So I don't know how to stop this from happening. I can't brace it because of all of the leather that's around it. It's too wobbly kind of sitting in there whenever I have it sitting on the anvil. So with luck, I got one in there, but I ended up having to grind it out because I can't get the other ones to go in here. So what I've done instead is I've gone and bought some very simple upholstery rivets. So these are two-sided rivets. They look like this on the one side, and then it's like this on the other side, and they just clamp together. And basically what I'm going to do, because this top headband piece goes over top of the side headband piece, we add that extra layer of steel, which makes it so these rivets don't actually reach. So what we're going to do instead is do a pattern. We're going to do a gold, silver, silver, gold, silver, silver kind of pattern all the way around the helmet, just to make sure that the two silver silvers line up with the double headband of the top and the side bands that go over each other. So I don't really have the right tool to be putting these in, so I'm just hammering them in, so they end up getting a little scuffed up, but that's actually okay because the rest of the helmet is not a super shiny finish on it as well. So we're going to make these nickel rivets look a little more like the steel rivets, but obviously not period perfect pieces. But for the sake of this, where we're just doing a cosplay kind of helmet or a kind of showpiece, this will do just fine. If I was doing this another way, I would have to figure out a way to get the nails to work properly because I'm obviously doing something wrong. So all of that said, I'm just going to go ahead and do the rest of these. I'll do one little video showing you how I do the one. It's very simple, and then I'll get the rest of the helmet finished so that we can get the liner put in. All right guys, so all of the rivets are put in now. I'm just in the middle of roughing them all up so that they look more like the style of the helmet itself. They did turn out better than I expected. I was a little irritated that they didn't work with the nails, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right? This is just for fun. So now that the rivets are all finished on the helmet, we're gonna get started on the liner. So the liner, I'm just gonna be using the paper template that I used for the quarter panels of the helmet. I'm using this because I actually want them to shrink a little bit, and what's gonna happen when we get two pieces of fabric put together and then pack it full of the cotton and then stitch it together, it's gonna actually shrink itself a little bit. And then we can potentially put a hole at the top of each of the pieces of fabric so that we can link them together. Make it similar to what you would see with a leather liner. But with this being a fabric liner, I think if we just put enough padding into it, it should be okay. Now I'm really going to overstuff them because the padding over time is going to condense and compress. So I want to make sure that this is really, really over padded so that I'm not being able to see out of the oculars initially and then not being able to see out of them afterwards because the padding has like compressed and my head's actually touching the top of the helmet. So I've gone ahead and cut out 8 patterns of the fabric. So that's the 1 and 2 that we're gonna stuff filled with cotton. And I'm going to back stitch this. So that's just a method that's a strong type of stitching. I'm not a stitching expert, but we'll see how this goes. And for the headband ring that goes around the inside of the helmet, I'm just doing a long band of fabric here. I'm probably going to shrink this down a little bit. This is probably a little bit too thick, but I'm just going to pack it full of cotton as well. Again, really, really pack it so that we're not having that compression issue, or when we do, it kind of adjusts to our head anyway. And I'm just going to stitch that to the leather ring here where I punched all the holes for the stitching. So I'm going to stop talking and we're going to start working. If I've learned anything from this so far, it's that I'm definitely not a seamstress, but overall, for my first time giving this a try, this actually didn't turn out too bad. The pattern, though it's a little wobbly, isn't too bad overall, and the stitch is fairly strong. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to turn this inside out. So I'll do that right now. So this will look like that now, finished. And we're going to pack the inside of this filled with the cotton balls, and then I'm actually just going to sew this flat. I'm not going to do it so that it's stitched to the inside because this edge is going to go attached to that band that I'm going to do of the rest of the fabric as well. So that'll just give me a flatter surface to sew it to the band to. So I'll show you guys as I go along. I'm not actually going to do the band on camera because it's almost the exact same process. I'm just going to leave a flat edge on one side and a closed edge like this on the other side, and then just sew it to it, and then we'll start stitching it into the helmet from there. Well, as you can see here, the liner is pretty much finished at this point. I have it rough fit in right now, and I've done a couple test fittings on my head just to make sure that I'm not too cramped wearing it. I did remove one of the, or didn't remove it, I never included it in the first place, of the triangle cushion pieces, just to make sure that the spacing in here wasn't like pressing so hard on my head that I was losing circulation and stuff like that. So all we have to do now is use some leather stitching to stitch the cotton band here to the leather band. And everything else is all stitched together. So as you can see, I'll just take it out. The triangular pieces are all stitched to the main band that goes around the head. I have some slotting kind of cut in here so that I can stitch and unstitch this as needed to add padding or remove padding just for comfort. The stitching itself is probably something that would make my mother cringe, but it doesn't look too bad considering it's my first go at this, and I'm not too worried about it because it's going to be on the inside of the helmet and you're not going to be able to tell. So that's all right. So the last thing is with the way that this has been designed, luckily we're not going to have to do a whole lot of trimming, if any, because you'll see the band stops at the edge of the leather bands and it doesn't actually block the oculars too badly, and I will be able to stitch this a little bit tighter so that these do sit back like that, so they're not really going to get in the way of the eyes at all. So that's good. So following this, I'm just going to get this stitched in. I'll show you guys how to do that, and then we're going to get to work on the cheek guards. So I'm going to get to that and stop talking and let's just go for it. The liner's all sewed in now. That's fitting to my head pretty nicely. I'll show you guys at the end of the video once I get it all put together just how it fits on my head. But for the next part, since this is all done now, I've just drawn a rough template for what I want the cheek guards to be. So let me just move this back for a second. So this is what we're going to do, and we're going to have this hang from the leather band that goes around the outside of the helmet. We're going to do 2 of these, 1 on either side. We're going to do a couple rings to hold it here, and then we might end up having to punch a hole in the corner here, just a small one, to put a ring that goes from around here into here, just to hold it so that it shapes to the front of the helmet, towards the front of the helmet. So, and we're going to duplicate that on this side as well, obviously. All right, guys, so it's been a long time, but we've got ourselves a finished Viking helmet. So I just wrapped up doing the leather. The leather was all done as a freehand design on here, just using a dapping tool. I'm not sure if that's the way you would normally do it, but that's the way that worked for me. And the design did come out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. Actually, mounting it to the leather strap, the main headband strap that goes around, I just used the nail shafts that I had left over from all of the rivets. So might as well not make them be waste, might as well use them to do something. So that worked out pretty well. I did opt not to anchor the cheek guards to the face mask, sorry, because I just don't want to add another rivet here. I really like the way this design looks, and since this is a costume piece and not something that I'd be taking into battle, I'm not worried about this little bit of movement that goes on here. So now I'm sure you guys want to see how it actually fits. So this is how the helmet does sit on my head. We've got a lot of coverage with the cheek guards here, guarding back to behind my ears even. In terms of movement, I can move my head around quite a bit without it really causing any kind of shifting on my head. If I did want to make it a little more secure, I could put a chin strap on this and that would alleviate a lot of that issue. But it's really not moving around that much for something that, if I'm just using as a costume piece, is going to cause any kind of issue. So that said, if you guys did enjoy following along, if you've made a helmet of your own, I'd like to see it, obviously. So comment or send me a message. And I hope you guys just enjoyed this. I hope you liked it as much as I did. This has been a long, long project for me. Probably the biggest metalworking project I've ever done. But I think it turned out quite well. For a first build of a helmet, I'm quite impressed with myself. I know I'm praising myself right now, but I'm actually happy with how this turned out. It's I had to make some kind of modifications to it that I wasn't expecting, but all in all, it's a good first piece, I think. So if you guys want to see more of this, I'm going to be doing a painting series, or maybe just a single video, I don't know yet. But I will be doing some painting for my future videos. I will come back to metalwork because I do really like working with metal. But after the length of this project, I'm just going to take a little bit of a break, try and do a couple other things in the meantime. So give me a like and subscribe if you like this series. If you've got any questions or comments, drop them beneath the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.